Hey, what is going on in the furniture industry these days? Well, today's guest, Warren Shoulberg, is going to give us all the deets. Stay tuned. Hey kids, and welcome to Designed by Wingnut Social. I am your host, Schmitzy Darla Jethro Powell, and I am recovering from a cold. So as I record this intro and outro, just bear with me. The actual interview, I was cootie free. So don't worry about that. So today's guest, Warren Shoulberg, has been on the show before, and he is an expert on our industry and the furnishings manufacturers and what's going on. And he has his finger on the pulse. And you guys might know that we've had some upsets lately with some of the trade manufacturers, some furnishing vendors that have gone a little belly up. So he and I are going to dig into why that happened. How much is attributed to the time we're living in, our economy? How much of that is attributed to the actual businesses? What in the hell is actually going on? And what does the outlook look like? And you guys are really going to want to stay tuned to my conversation here with Warren Shoulberg. So in the interest of time and saving my voice so I can record this, let me tell you a little bit about my man, Warren Shoulberg. He is a business journalist and he knows the retail business. Warren has been a regular contributor to the Robin Report and the Business of Home, as well as his own blog, warrensreport.com. As a former editor-in-chief for several leading business-to-business publications specializing in home furnishings retailing, he has chronicled the good, the bad, and the ugly of the business in a career spanning 4 decades. Warren, you don't look old enough. Did you start when you were 10? His award-winning commentaries elicit both praise and complaints. Join the club. All right, guys, help me in welcoming Warren Shoulberg to the show. Hey there, Warren Shoulberg. Welcome back to the show. How the hell are you?
I'm okay, Darla. Thanks for asking. I'm, going with the flow. Assume you're okay too.
Yep. I'm doing all right here in Southern Maryland. Fall has struck. The air is cool, and it's my favorite time of year, really. So can't complain.
Okay, I could use one more beach vacation, but I'll deal with it though. So.
Right. So if you're new to the show, Warren Shoulberg isn't. He's actually been on. It's been a couple of years though, right? Talking about the state of the furniture industry and with the recent events that have gone down in a couple of pretty big name furnishing manufacturers just kind of throwing up their shutters and saying, see ya, wouldn't want to be ya. I wanted to talk to you, the expert in the industry, in the space, and see what is going on with the furnishings industry and just kind of pick your brain on it. So if you're game, let's dig into the biggest, most obvious story is Mitchell Gold. What the hell happened?
The furniture business and the entire home furnishings industry, business really sucks right now. It's the industry is still dealing with a COVID hangover. So as we all know, home furnishings business exploded during the pandemic. Everybody was stuck at home and said, God, my house is a dump. I better fix it up. And they did. They spent a lot of money fixing it. And the industry had two spectacular years. Retailers, vendors, interior designers, everyone. People ventured out of their homes again and said, oh, I want to go to a restaurant. I want to go to a movie. I want to go to a concert. God, I want to go on vacation and get out of this house. So spending changed radically. Again, this is all stuff that everybody knows in the industry. And the fact of the matter is that if you bought a new sofa in 2020 or 21, chances are you don't need another one right now, and you don't need another bedroom set, and you don't need a new refrigerator. What's happened is that the furniture folks are dealing with this hangover and are trying to navigate through the current situation, which is exasperated by the fact that there's still too much inventory out at the tail end of the pandemic in the industry. Bought whatever wasn't nailed down because they were selling everything. Yeah. They're stuck with a lot of bad inventory, a lot of stuff that they shouldn't have bought in the first place, and stuff that came in on $25,000 containers from Asia. And containers were pre-pandemic were $2,000, and now they're back down again. So Mitchell Gold kind of got caught up in all of that. They have been owned by a private equity firm, and we can spend endless podcasts talking about private equity companies. But
well, let me ask you really quickly, Warren, not to interrupt you, but also to interrupt you. Can you explain, because I was reading your article on Business of Home, really good article, by the way, if you guys want to read that over Business of Home, Mitchell Gold and Bob Williams, Shutters Abruptly by ours truly here, Warren Shoulberg. What is the impact of being owned by a private equity, and what exactly does that mean?
Private equity companies, which are essentially loan companies, come in and buy up a company and pretty much pay for it out of debt. So they borrow the money against the assets of the company. That company then needs to service that debt. Home furnishings companies don't throw off a lot of cash. So, I don't have the specific Mitchell Gold numbers in front of me. Sure. And the private equity guys who bought them are certainly not the worst out there. But they come in and they take cash out. They generally have a management fee. Sometimes they'll have special dividends that go back to the PE firm. So there's lots of ways that they restrict the operations of the companies that they buy. And that's a lot of what happened with Mitchell. When sales were going great, they could service that debt. They were throwing off enough cash. And then when the business tanked, and again, that wasn't specifically Mitchell, we don't see their specific numbers as a privately owned company, but it's safe to say that their business is nowhere near what it was. So,
well, I'm wondering how much of that is the slinky effect of the ordering, the delays in the furnishing industry and getting that inventory for COVID and it dying down because people are going out and they're traveling again and they've already bought the sofa, right? Like you said, to your point, versus maybe some aggressive mismanagement as well from those private equity firms. Was that a perfect storm, or do you think it was really just the industry more so than the management?
Well, Mitchell and Bob, who are terrific guys and built an amazing company, both kind of stepped back from running it day to day. Mitchell, particularly, who kind of was the grand mystic ruler of Mitchell Gold, and Bob was the designer. So Mitchell stepped back first, and then Bob did. And like a lot of companies, when the founders go, they're different companies. So they brought in another executive to run it. She came in with substantial home furnishings credentials. She had not run a factory before. She was much more on the retail side. So maybe that was a problem. It's hard to say. And I don't know if whoever they had brought in, how it would have gone without Mitchell and Bob actively involved.
Yeah, because they're not connected anymore. They don't have the same kind of skin in the game to make sure it gets run in the way, right? Yeah, and that's always a downfall for when you sell a business and something to consider. So, what would you say to those designers out there who have like multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars of orders outstanding with them? Is there any recourse? Is there any updates on that as far as what's going to happen to that?
Mitchell did an interview with Business of Home. I think it was a podcast, in fact, in which his advice to those designers was talk to your lawyer. And that's pretty ominous advice. Mitchell Gold, the company has said they think there were about 4,000 orders in process. Now, how many of those came through interior designers and how many of them were just customers going into stores? It's hard to say. They're never going to get that. They're never going to get that product. The factory is shut down. Virtually anything that was finished has gone out the door already. So, there was some thought for a while that a white knight would come in and buy it and restart it. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Still possible. If Richard Nixon could come back, then anything is possible in terms of second acts in America. So
that is true,
and that dates me if I'm if I'm making Richard Nixon.
I'm there with you. I think I'm about your age, or pretty close.
Yeah, I'll just say interior designers are really left holding the bag, and if you had orders with Mitchell Gold, the company, the chances of you getting that merchandise are pretty slim, and you need to have a plan B.
Well, there's some parallels too, not just in retailers in general, like Peloton, right? Peloton saw tremendous growth during the pandemic. And now I think their stock's like $4 or $5 a share, just because I don't know if that's lack of planning. I mean, I'm sitting here and I don't have any financial education, but I'm like, okay, it seems like you would plan in anticipation. I mean, it was pretty obvious people were staying home, not going to gyms, redoing their house. And I wanted to ask you, going from that, I'm seeing with the economy now isn't what it was 2 years ago, but in my personal experience, it's still pretty strong overall for interior designers. I do see some slowing down, not in the interior design industry, but not crazy, right? I mean, I'm a marketing agency for interior designers, so I pretty much can see who's coming in and who's going out and who's getting what leads and stuff. But how do you think that the higher interest rates and right now are affecting the economy? Because I can tell you how it affected me. Like my fiance and I bought a house 2 years ago, and instead of going out and buying a new house, we're remodeling the house now. I am actually going in and hiring kitchen designers to work on the house, buying furniture, contractors. Are you seeing any of that impacting the interior design industry or furnishing space? Is that having any impact, or am I just in my own little world?
No, I think you're kind of a case study on one of the scenarios that's going on, and yes, the economy is not what it was, but it's never going to be as good as it was in those pandemic years.
That is true.
What we're seeing is, most people have jobs. They have good paying jobs. The big difference this time, and, people should not compare this to the 2008, 2009 housing crash. Housing prices are continuing to be okay. You're not seeing a crash of that stuff. The big change is that with interest rates that high, people are just not moving and buying other houses. The housing starts end of the housing market is doing okay. But new homes are about 10% of the overall market. 90% of the housing business has to do when people sell their house and buy another one. And that's what we're not seeing, is that those interest rates, anybody who's locked in with a 3% mortgage is not going to go to a 7%, and
that's where we are.
Yep. And there's one finance company that's trying to launch a financial product that you can take your old mortgage with you to a new property, which is kind of interesting.
That is very cool.
The banks are not happy about that because
I'm sure.
Because they really want to sell you a 7% mortgage or a 6% mortgage. Mm-hmm. So what you got is that people who are stuck in their homes or have decided I can't move are going to do some reinvesting back in their homes. So the question is, what didn't they do in 2020 and 21 and the early part of 22 that they can still do? So again, it's not necessarily furniture. Most people bought furniture. They bought a new refrigerator. They probably did kitchen cabinets and appliances.
That's what we're doing now.
Yeah. Okay. But you have been in your house. You kind of caught the tail end of the housing boom. And but most people who've been in there have already made those investments in their home. So maybe they go out and buy a new set of towels. Maybe they buy a new rug or a new light. They've already done a lot of the significant capital expenditures in their house. So
in my circles, not just me, but friends of mine who didn't pull the trigger then are considering doing it now rather than buying a house. So I'm just saying that there's still, I think, I think we should keep our eye on that metric. I think that's going to happen. Warren, I want to ask you how much of this with Klausner, Mitchell Gold, what was the other one? There's a third.
The other one was a company that owned the Lane brand. It had
okay.
It was United Furniture was the company, but most people would know them as Lane. That's the brand they owned.
How much of this, what we're seeing happening with these private equity owned businesses, I think one of those wasn't private equity, is a result of Wayfair and Amazon and these big box, hard to compete with, kind of okay, sometimes furnishing companies competing with their business.
Klausner was a big Wayfair and Amazon supplier. So,
okay,
these private equity guys, they're very they're very cold and cut and dry, and they're all looking at a spreadsheet. And the minute the business gets below a certain level, they don't say, "Well, we think it's going to turn around. We think we can hang on to this." They say, "We're done." That line was different 3 years ago when interest rates were zero and money was essentially free. Now that these guys are paying significant rates for the money they borrow, there's just no tolerance. So, Amazon and Wayfair and those guys, they cut a tough bargain and they're very sharp negotiators. But I don't think they're the ones causing all this nonsense right now.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And I appreciate your input. So lastly, I want to ask you, what can we as interior designers do to protect ourselves from having, $200,000 worth of orders and have a company just say, you know what, maybe not. Call a lawyer.
Well, I think dental school is a good option. It's never too late. Our mother was always right about that, and so that's one option. I guess the obvious answer is don't do all your business with one or two suppliers. I mean, spread it out. Mitchell Gold had wonderful designs, but you could get something pretty close to what Mitchell and Bob were doing at a dozen other companies. And maybe that's the way to look at it is
diversify
and don't make yourself vulnerable for getting killed when your big supplier goes out.
Are there any obvious red flags? Like if we're saying, I want to go an ABC company and let me just look and see if they're owned by a private equity or anything that would just glaringly stand out to where you'd be like, maybe not, or wouldn't go that far.
Just the fact that they're owned by private equity, that alone is not a deal breaker.
Okay.
There are some furniture companies that have been very successful. Lexington comes to mind as one that was owned by private equity and has done very well. They're now owned by somebody else, but so just a PE ownership by itself is not a deal breaker. It is something you should look at in your equation to see if how that does. I would look at slowing order fulfillment. If a company keeps saying, well, we think it was 6 weeks and now it's going to be 10, or it's slowing down, and the excuses start to sound a little lame. The dog ate my homework kind of stuff. That's something that I would worry about. I'd also. It's a terrible thing, but I would follow the CFO of these companies, not somebody that you generally would ever meet. CFOs as chief financial officer, have great instincts for getting the hell out of Dodge, before things get terrible. And if you see a CFO who's been at a company for a while and all of a sudden he's left and he doesn't necessarily have another job, to me, that's a big red flag. It's not a coincidence. So I always look for that.
I wonder, as you were saying that, if there were any communications from these companies to designers delaying shipment or fulfillment, if there was any of that soft warning, before we have a whole bunch of orders that aren't just going to get fulfilled. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how Mitchell Gold and Bob we're doing with that. 4,000 orders seems like a lot to have works in progress. So I have a feeling they were running short of cash and weren't able to buy foam and fabric and wood frames. And so to me, that's a telltale sign too. Anybody who's interested in my rants and raves, I'm at warrensreport.com. Apparently, the Warren Report was taken before I got here. So it's warrensreport.com. And I write for Business of Home and the Robin Report too. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. Now I have to ask you if you're ready for the What Up Wingnut round.
Okay.
What would the hashtag on your tombstone be?
A hashtag is the last thing I would ever put on my tombstone. I use social media. I follow it. I'm not a Luddite, but as a journalist, hashtags are just an insult to my intelligence, and so I'm hoping that long after I'm dead, people who might see a hashtag on a tombstone would go, "What is that? Why is that? What does that cross thing mean on there?" So yeah, I'm not putting a hashtag on my tombstone.
You know what? I accept that. I love that. It's one of the most entertaining answers I've ever had on this show. You're stuck on a deserted island, but you can have your favorite food forever. What is it?
So, I think it would be rice, because if I'm on a deserted island, I'm catching fish, and I'm making sushi. So I need the rice to make my sushi. So I'm set. I think, if that island is someplace good and there's some tuna or some other stuff, I'm going to be okay. But I do need that rice.
You're a thinking man. I love it. Last but not least, please recommend a book that has impacted you either personally or professionally.
While I read every magazine and newspaper that's not nailed down, I'm a terrible book reader. I just don't have the patience for it. So as a writer, I've always been influenced by Kurt Vonnegut. I think he was such a creative writer and opened up the parameters of how you can communicate. And I try to do some of the things he has done, or he did, not nearly as successfully, but he kind of just opened my eyes to other ways to communicate.
Okay, we'll take that as an author recommendation in general. I love it. Very intellectual recommendation. All right, Warren Shoulberg, please tell the audience your website again, where they can go to read your up-to-date information on the industry, and we will call it a day.
So it's warrensreport.com, available on screens everywhere, and I hope you follow it. I post several times a week, and God knows I always have some opinion and just another loudmouth ex-New Yorker. So yeah.
Really good opinions. It's really good. I was actually, when I was reading before the show, I was on there reading all of the articles and everything. It's super informative. I love it. It's really well done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us again on the show. Guys, if you missed the first episode, you can go into our show notes at wingnutsocial.com. Just search in there for Warren Shoulberg. You can see his first amazing interview. And that's it. That's it for today. Thank you again for joining us, Warren. You're a wealth of information as usual.
Thanks so much for having me. And everybody stay well.
Stay well. Amen.
All right, kids, there you have it. Some amazing insight from my man, Warren Shoulberg. What do you think? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Send us an email to info@wingnutsocial.com. All right, guys, that's it for this week. I'm going to try to save my voice here. Don't forget to head on over to wingnutsocial.com if you need help with marketing your interior design firm, if you're an architect, or if you just make stuff for the home. Maybe you're a rug vendor. Maybe you make kitchen cabinets. Maybe you make case goods. Maybe you make furnishings. Well, we do all of that. And we have lots of clients who will tell you that we do an amazing job. That's wingnutsocial.com. And remember to tune in next week, where hopefully I don't sound like Brenda Vaccaro, and to get out there, get uncomfortable, and be great.
and see what is going on with the furniture. First edit.
All right, guys, that's it for this week's episode. Member berries.